So which is more valuable, Durin's Constellations or his signature weapon? In this video, I'll just be going through all of his constellations, explaining what they do and how much value are they going to give you, and then finally comparing them to his signature weapon and seeing which one of them should you wish for first. I'll give you a final roadmap on the correct way you can whale on Durin. Before we continue with that though, if you're trying to get Durin's Constellations or his signature weapon, I would recommend getting your Genesis crystals from LDshop.gg. LDshop is a cheap, fast, and safe game top-up website that offers top-ups for many games, including Genshin Impact. As you guys can see here, these are the offers they have for Genshin, and all of them are cheaper than the official game store, starting off from 15% cheaper and even more. For example, we can see that 3,280 Genesis crystals offer. It costs $50 in the official game store, but here it only costs $39.10. That's 10.89 or more than 21% saved by using LDshop. They also have many other things like bundles, character outfits, Welkins, and stuff like that. But yeah, when you want to buy, just click on the offer you'd like to choose. For example, I'm gonna buy the 300 crystals offer. You only need to enter your server region and user ID. Obviously, make sure they're right, and then click on top up. And then you just choose your payment method, and then enter your details, and then just pay. Shortly after that, you'll just receive the crystals in your account. And right now, if you use my link, you'll get a 15% off coupon and also an extra 5% off. That can save you up to $50. They also have more cool things on the website. For example, if you spend more than $80, that can allow you to win a free Welkin. You can go and check it out yourself, click the link in the description or the pinned comment, and top up now. Alright, so back to the video. First of all, let's start with his signature weapon first. His signature sword, athame artis, is basically just going to give you 608 base attack at level 90, 33% crit rate, which is a huge crit rate substat, which is pretty good for Durin. And then from the passive, it's going to give you crit damage to your elemental burst, 16%. And then when your elemental burst hits an opponent, it's going to give you even more attack increase for yourself, 20%. And then all of your party members are going to have their attack increased by 16%, which is a pretty good support feature. Additionally, when you have another hex ray character on your team, the attack effects are going to be increased by another 75%. So basically it's just going to be an extra 15% attack increase for yourself, and then an extra 12% attack increase for the rest of your party members. This is basically what this weapon is going to give you. It's simply just going to be damage bonus and crit rate, and then some attack for your team, which is pretty good. It's a very good like stat stick in general, but it definitely doesn't have like the usual special buffs that like a usual 5-star weapon is going to get, like a usual signature weapon. So this weapon is simply just a stat stick, and in general, you have many other stat sticks that you can use instead of it, and you definitely don't need this weapon. If you have good 5-star weapons like the Jade Cutter, for example, the Mist Splitter, the Harangipiku, or honestly any good 5-star weapons that have like crit rate, crit damage, or anything like that, usually this weapon is only going to be around like 10 to 18% better than most of them. 10% is going to be without a Hex Ray character, or even less honestly, and with a Hex Ray character on your team, it's going to be around like 20% or a little less, like 18 to 17, but that's with all conditions met. So honestly, in general, this weapon is not going to be something very special. It's simply just a stat stick, a very good stat stick specifically made for Durin, but nonetheless, it doesn't really give you anything special that you cannot get anywhere else. So that's my whole take about his signature weapon. I think it's good, but I don't think it's very special or needed. Alright, so now moving on to his constellations, we're just going to check them pretty quickly, explain what they do, what they give you, and then finally see if they're valuable or not. I'm not going to give exact damage increase numbers because in a lot of cases it's going to depend on the team and stuff like that. Usually there's support constellations, just wanted to state that. But yeah, starting off with a C1. For C1 is that after you use your elemental burst, depending on the effect of your elemental burst, it's going to give you either 20 stacks of Cycle of Enlightenment, which is some sort of stack, to all of your party members. But when they deal normal attacks, charge attacks, plunging attacks, elemental skill, or burst damage, basically everything almost, they're going to consume 1 stack out of 20, and their damage is going to be increased by 60% of Durin's attack. It's just going to be additive damage increase, and that's going to be pretty good for a lot of characters, especially characters that deal a lot of hits, like normal attack characters and stuff like that, that consistently deal damage. It's going to be super good on them, and it's definitely going to be a pretty good buff. So I really like the support that his C1 is going to give you, and you have 20 stacks of those, so you're going to need 20 hits for you to consume all of the stacks. So I think it's going to be enough for pretty much every single rotation. If you're using the dark elemental burst thing though, then in that case, you're just going to give the stacks to Durin himself, 20 stacks, and every time he deals damage with his elemental burst, is going to consume 2 stacks, and it's going to increase his own damage by 150% of his attack. So it's going to be a huge damage increase for him if you're focusing on damage, and if you're focusing on support, then it's also going to be a super good support constellation because it's just simply additive damage bonus, and that's usually pretty good and not very common common to have. So to have it on a very universal character like Durin, it's definitely going to make him much better in my opinion. So I really like C1, especially for a C1. I think it has tremendous value in my opinion. And I do think it's much better than his signature weapon because it gives more than just attack buffs to your team. Attack buffs are much more common. You could get them from so many other characters or other like artifact sets and stuff like that. And attack is going to be much easier to build, but damage bonus to your damage is definitely going to be much better in my opinion. So yeah, I do think C1 is going to be pretty good. C2 is that after 20 seconds of using your elemental burst, if your team triggers vaporize, melt, burn, and overloaded pyro swirl, or basically any pyro related reactions, or they deal pyro damage or dendro damage to an opponent affected by burning, all nearby party members are going to gain a 50% increase to their pyro damage and also the corresponding element to the damage involved in the reaction. So it's basically just like his passive, but it's going to increase damage bonus instead of resistance shred, and that's going to be super valuable. Obviously for the same reasons that we talked about before, because his passive is going to be pretty good. You can trigger it pretty easily with most characters in the game. With the C2, you can also give damage bonus to most characters in the game except physical characters. So any character that's not pyro, or even pyro characters but you're going to need like another element on your team, you can easily get resistance shred and also 50% elemental damage bonus just from having Durin on your team. You can just do a reaction and all of your party members are going to gain that damage bonus, and it's a huge damage bonus too. It's 50%, which is definitely super good in my opinion. So I do think his C2 is definitely super good. Honestly, one of the best support C2s I've seen in a while. It's just an easy extra 50% elemental damage bonus to basically anyone in the game. So yeah, C2 is definitely super good too, in my opinion. C3 is just simply going to increase the damage of your elemental burst. It's pretty good. It's just extra damage really. It's just going to increase your multipliers. So it's just basically extra damage for Durin himself. And honestly, it's better than most like level constellations. It's probably going to result in around like a good 10% damage increase or something like that, which is pretty good. So yeah, it's a decent constellation. I definitely don't think it's nowhere as good as the other ones for sure, like C1 and C2. But for Durin himself, it's just going to increase the level of your elemental burst, simply more multipliers and more damage, and that's pretty much it really. C4 is just going to increase your elemental burst damage by 40%, which is most of your damage, which is pretty good. And then it's also going to give you a 30% chance that characters are not going to consume stacks if they hit opponents from your C1. So before you have 20 stacks, every time you deal damage with your normal attacks, charge attacks, or whatever, the character is going to consume 1 stack. If you have C4, there's a 30% chance that a character can hit an opponent, but no stacks are going to be consumed, which I guess is going to help you a little bit. Maybe if you're running out of stacks, if your characters attack pretty frequently, or if some other like sub DPS are stealing stacks, but in general, I don't think it's that good at all. It's basically just more damage for Durin, maybe a little more damage team-wide, but yeah, I don't think it's as valuable as C1 and C2, or nowhere close. It's probably going to be around like a 15% damage increase maybe, which is not necessarily bad. I think it's mainly just like a damage constellation. It's not really a support constellation. It can allow you to have more stacks, but it doesn't really matter that much in my opinion. So I think C4 is decent, but it's definitely not super good. C5 is just going to increase the level of your elemental skill. I do think that's going to be pretty decent, honestly better than C3, because it's going to increase the amount of energy you gain from using your elemental skill, which is pretty good in my opinion. It's going to give you like 5 extra energy, so it's not going to be like a huge increase, or not 5, it's going to give you 7, assuming you had it at level 8 before. It's going to push it to level 11, so that's going to be a 9 energy increase actually, which is pretty good. Yeah, I do think it's going to be much more valuable in my opinion. It's just going to increase the multipliers of your elemental skill, which is not really that important, but it's going to increase the amount of energy you gain, which is decent, but definitely not as good as the other constellations like C1 and C2 for sure. Now finally for C6 is elemental burst is just going to ignore 30% of the opponent's defense. That's already super good. A 30% defense increase is going to make your damage skyrocket, so his damage is going to jump by a long shot. And then also if you're 0 elemental burst as the white dragon thing, which is the support one, in that case if you hit an opponent with it, that opponent's defense is going to be decreased by 30%. So it's not going to ignore that defense by 30%. This time is going to actually decrease his defense by 30%. That means when other characters hit this opponent, the defense decrease is going to be present there. So it's going to be a super valuable constellation. So it's going to be a super valuable support constellation. Defense shred is always going to be super valuable, and it's one of the best support capabilities you can have. So that's obviously pretty good. Now if you're using the black dragon thing, it's just going to ignore an extra 40% of the opponent's defense on top of the 30% already ignored. So Durin's elemental burst in total is going to be ignoring 70% of the opponent's defense, which is it's going to result in a huge damage increase to his elemental burst, probably around like 45% or even more depending on the team and how often you're actually using your elemental burst, and that's going to be super good for his damage. And also it's going to be pretty good if you want to use it for support. A 30% defense shred is no joke. So now for the final conclusion, I think most of you already know what I'm gonna say here, but the correct roadmap to wish for Durin, in my opinion, is gonna be like this. The first thing you'd want to get is gonna be C1 for sure. I think C1 wins against R1. It's just simply better in my opinion. It's just gonna give you that extra attack damage bonus, additive damage bonus, instead of just the simple attack increase that the weapon is gonna give to your team. So I do think C1 is gonna be much more valuable for Durin, unfortunately. Even though this weapon is gonna be a very good like universal weapon, but that also means that it's not gonna be that special on Durin himself. So C1, R1 are gonna be close. If you really need a weapon, then you can go for R1, I guess. But in general, for Durin, for the best support, I definitely recommend going for C1. I think it's much better than his weapon. After that, I still think you should go for C2 instead of his weapon. I think C2 is gonna be more worth it than his weapon for sure. A 50% damage increase to whatever main DPS you have, or Durin himself, is gonna be much more valuable than his weapon too, in my opinion. It's gonna make him a much better support and also much better sub DPS. So I do think C2 is gonna be more worth it than his weapon. After that, I do think going for the weapon is gonna be the right thing to do probably. So getting R1 after C2 is gonna be pretty good. Now this is in general gonna be a pretty good stopping point as always. I mean, most characters stop at C2 R1, which is usual, but I think it's much more emphasized for Durin because the constellation value is gonna fall off dramatically after C2. So I do think you're heavily encouraged to just stop at C2, get his weapon, and that's it if you're trying to invest in him. If you want to continue, honestly, I don't think the rest of his constellations are that good. C6 is definitely pretty good if you want to go for it. So if you want to go straight to C6, then I do think it has pretty good value. But if you want to stop at like C4 or C5 or C3, I don't think it's worth it. Just stop at C2 completely instead, and that's it. And obviously, I'm not saying you need any of those. Even at C0, R0 is going to be a super good support, pretty versatile, pretty valuable, and you can use him pretty decently. But yeah, tell me what you guys are going to be getting for your Durin. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.